cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
Hello, I'm Joan Weir. I'm a member of Divine Healing Ministries, and this is just a reflection for Holy Week. This is Maundy, Thursday. The word Maundy is derived from the Latin for command and refers to the commandment that Jesus gave to his disciples when he said, "Love one another as I have loved you." Jesus said this when he was trying to prepare his friends for his going away, and they didn't really want to hear. At the Last Supper, which Jesus shared with his disciples, he gave them bread and wine, symbols of his body and blood. He was really saying a last goodbye to them then, before he faced the cross, and he knew what the future held for him: turmoil and betrayal, and then the cross. And the communion service is remembering this, his death on the cross specifically. I love the communion service. It's bittersweet for me, remembering with sadness his death and looking forward with joy to meeting him again when he comes back to the earth as King and Lord to set up his kingdom. I'd like to tell you of two memorable communion services that I attended. A couple of years ago, I went with 6 other people to a retreat centre in Wales called Faldebrennen. It's a beautiful and very peaceful place high up in the Welsh hills, away from everything, and everything there is very basic. At the edge of the centre is a cross which is high, lifted high on a rocky piece of ground. It's called the High Cross. I often stood there by myself gazing at it and thinking and wondering about why the cross ever happened and how it happened for me. One day the 7 of us gathered around that particular cross and celebrated Holy Communion. It was very special. We were all in accord with each other and we all loved the Lord. During the service we had times of silence and times of sharing. It was unlike, I suppose, an ordinary communion service. But at the end we joined hands and hearts and embraced and felt God's love pour down on our little group. And we went silently back to the room where we usually met. It was emotional and very memorable. The central object of any communion service is remembering Jesus, the Lamb who was slain. And Isaiah talks about him in chapter 53 of his book. Let's read a couple of verses. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. So that passage tells us that there's not only forgiveness, but healing in the cross. The second service that I remember takes place each Easter morning early, weather permitting. Members of the church in which I worship, the Agape Centre on the Lisbon Road, which is a Methodist congregation, and any others who wish to join, meet together in the walled garden in Lady Dixon Park. A small table is set with the bread and wine, and our minister leads us through the service. We sing and respond, and often people walking in the park in the early morning stop and listen. Even the dogs stop with them, and we hope worship with us. Mostly the sun has been shining, the birds singing, and the flowers and shrubs blooming and sending their perfume on us. And you can just imagine Jesus walking in that garden, just like he did in the Garden of Eden. Worship somehow seems so natural in that setting. But communion with God can happen anywhere. All we need is a quiet heart. It can happen in our own living rooms, in our gardens, in our car. In fact, anywhere, even when it's crowded. We will find that it will make us thankful that he was lifted up to die, that we might live. The horror
To the old rugged cross I will ever be true. Its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever and exchange it someday for a crown. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday